Hello, everybody. And today on Really Hill Podcast, I'm joined by Gary Allen, a Galway based man, an executive coach, mentor, writer, and founder of the Life Design Collective. Gary spent almost 30 years in the IT world before making a major life transition into coaching, mentoring, and human development. And that is exactly where today's conversation lives, in that uncomfortable but powerful space where a person starts asking, is this it? Gary works with people in midlife, career change, identity shift, and what he calls the second act, not as a crisis, but as an opportunity to stop performing, stop pretending, and start designing a life that actually fits who you are now. We'll be talking about change, alcohol-free living, disability, behavior, identity, courage, small steps, and what it really means to become more honest with yourself. Gary, welcome to the Really Hill Podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you, Richard. I'm great. Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Good to have you. Good to have you.
Pity it's not sunnier outside, but anyway.
Yeah. The weather was lovely over the weekend. We're back to doing the cold snap again. But sure, look, we'll struggle on through it.
We live in Ireland.
We do. So we'll jump straight in. Gary, tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a bit on your background, where you're from, and what kind of brought you up to today.
Okay. Well, thank you again for having me here. So I was just be 54 in a few weeks' time. So I'm 54 in 11/12.
You're only a young fella.
Yeah. And I was born and raised in Roscommon, which is a great place today after us beating Mayo at the weekend. Yeah, very normal rural Irish upbringing. I'm the oldest of three boys. So two younger brothers, brought up on a farm, went to the local CBS in Roscommon, and before that, the local national school. So far, so normal. And, then I did a degree in computer science in DCU, Dublin, and in the early 90s. And, from there, I kind of worked in the IT industry for 30 years after that. But I suppose if I kind of reverse a little bit, the reason that IT kind of appealed to me at the time when I did English was my best subject in school by a long, long way. So it made perfect sense to do computer science. But anyway, the thing that was, I suppose, different for me growing up was I was born with a disability. I got spina bifida. I'm a wheelchair user. I've been a wheelchair user for a very long time. And it's just not even really interesting, but it kind of informed my upbringing in that I started reading. When my brothers were out farming, I was reading, and I've had a love of learning since very early on, just a love of, and from, I suppose, my mid-teens onwards, I got interested in personal development. Didn't really even know that's what I was interested in at the time, but just the whole idea of motivation, about mindset, about ambition, about all of these things, really appealed to me. So I started reading that, I suppose around the time that I went into the CBS in Roscommon. So as I say, I went and did a degree in computer science because, working at it was involved, you could sit there at a desk all day, really suited me, and I loved it. But there was always this thing in the back of my brain. I was always into this whole personal development. Buying, a book you can see behind me is more or less in that realm and coaching now these days. So yeah, I worked in the IT industry, as I say, first in Dublin for a while, then in Limerick, and then when I got married, moved to Galway, and I've been in Galway since 2000, so about 26 years now. I was working in full-time in IT until 2023. I suppose things began to shift for me, or did shift for me dramatically in 2017-18, when I decided that, I was going to just knock booze on the head for a while, because, it was just like my relationship with alcohol was standard, fairly normal, I suppose, growing up. Rural Ireland on a Saturday night, you go out with my brothers. I used to go out every Saturday night with my brothers to the local nightclubs, etc. But it was kind of a thing that was, never, looking back, never really sat well with me, because I was the one that was kind of speeding up as everyone else was slowing down. And so, but, didn't think anything of it. I just thought that was the way things were until about 2017. I'm, no longer in my early 20s. I'm now 45, and, going out on a Saturday night has been replaced by sharing a bottle of wine a few times a week. And I thought, shit, this is getting in my way now. So I knocked it on the head for what I thought was 3 months in 2018, and haven't drank since. And that decision gave me energy and clarity, and the like of which I'd never found before. So that kind of, if I bring it back to coaching, or that what I do now, I kind of realized, hold on, actually, I've been reading all of this stuff for years and years and years, and it kind of dawned on me that I was kind of had this question about, okay, what is this coaching thing? What could I actually be a coach? And because I've been interested in coaching and kind of, but no, more or less from the other side of the fence, from the client side of the fence, and explored it a little bit, but never from the coach side of the fence. So I started a coaching course in 2018 and early 2018, even late 2017, I don't remember exactly. And, this sounds dramatic, but it's true, is that within an hour of starting that course, I knew I'd found my thing, that because absolutely, this is what I was born to do. So, so I started doing that a little bit more, mainly supporting people to change their relationship with alcohol. And then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, to the point where, around the pandemic time or shortly after, it became almost like 2 full-time jobs. Morning, evening, weekends was coaching, and in the middle bit then was the kind of paying the mortgage and the IT work. And that continued until early 2023, when I just quit the IT world entirely. And I'm here now as a coach, doing all this stuff that you were talking about earlier on in your introduction. Now, I suppose the other key point to this whole thing, to lead me to where I am today, as I say, I'm 54. So I didn't make any of these changes until I was 45. So it kind of really gives me don't like the word, but I'll use it, a passion for supporting people to make change in midlife, which is what I think is a massive opportunity rather than, a crisis, as you said. So yeah, that's me up to this point.
So there's loads of little bits in that where I kind of suppose want to jump backwards and forwards and bits that you said there. The piece where you believe that you found that you had your passion, you found your new thing, that the piece that drives you. I found that with social care many years ago. I was actually volunteering with the homeless, and a really good paid job in sales management, and volunteering in a homeless place, and the sales was obviously paying the bills, and the homeless piece was voluntary. And I'd come home and say, I have all this money, but I hate the job. And I love working with the homeless, but I'm not getting paid for it. What am I supposed to do here? And it brought me on a real journey of self-discovery in my own life. And then obviously realized, okay, I need a career change here. For me, I felt I was intrinsically driven to do it, in that the drive came from the inside out rather than the carrot or the stick approach of motivators. And that was for me. I was reading up on you. I was doing my homework before you came on today, and I came across the phrase, and I loved it. Is this it? Talk to me a little bit about that. And I suppose what I would love to hear a little bit more about is, so you went and you done your coaching piece, and you knew it was the right fit. But what do you think made the decision in terms of the niche or the market that you were targeting? Where did that come from, and what does that look like?
I suppose the thing that I found, the reason that I suppose that I found that coaching was my thing, was this whole concept of belief. Because, when you're young and you're gung-ho and you can believe that you can conquer the world in your teens and 20s, that's all very well. But as you go on and, life goes on, and you get responsibilities, you get mortgages, you get jobs, kids, all of that stuff, you have obviously got responsibilities. So the belief that you can make profound change in your life it doesn't necessarily go away. I think that'd be a bit too extreme, but it certainly dims down among all the weight of everything that we have on our plates. And one of the things that has been absolutely core in my life is this whole idea of belief, because, as I say, I was born with a disability. So, but, and I'm the youngest of, oldest of three. My two brothers don't have disabilities. But my parents believed that all three of us could be anything that we wanted to be. And and it wasn't necessarily rah-rah, or it wasn't actually. It was just unspoken that, okay, let's do it. And the belief that they had was unshakable, and still did. And that was just something that I absolutely, in my core, wanted to bring to other people. That, I don't care if you're 45. I don't care if you've got a mortgage. I don't care if everything is shit. You can make change, and I will be the one to be there with you and, believe in you unconditionally. And so that, and that's what really drove me on to really work in that niche, whether it be supporting people to change their relationship with alcohol, or to make any change. As as I said, the older you get, the more the belief kind of is weighed down by the weight of life and responsibility. So I'm going to be the one that's going to be on your side when you're not on your own side. So that kind of really was what got me into this niche.
Yeah, very good. And again, whilst doing my homework, and I've had this realization, I suppose, many times, but a lot of people that would come to me have often asked, do you only work with people who are in addiction, or do you only work with people who are, have an alcohol issue and stuff like that? And for me, it's not about the drink or the drug or the thing, the gamble and the tiddlywinks, whatever. I see them as the escape,
Yeah, totally.
they're the cure until the cure no longer works.
Mhm.
And so what's the underlying issue? What's the underlying problem? And I think that's just life, isn't it?
Mm.
Life comes along and it throws us curveballs, and we pick something to try and cure the problem or
Yeah.
fix the problem. We don't always get it right. That sometimes turns into the drink or the drug
Yeah.
or the gambling or the sex or the rock and roll or whatever it is as the cure, until the cure no longer works, until the cure becomes a bigger problem than the other thing. And I suppose that's it. And when I was reading through a lot of your stuff and just looking at what exactly it is that you do, we've a lot of similarities and crossover
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
we do.
I suppose every individual has their own way of looking at things and their own perception and things like that. But it really is, being able to look at people and see the potential in them when they can't see the potential in themselves to be able to do something. There was another piece that again came across while I was reading some of your blogs, and that the second act. What's the
Mm.
second act all about? I think it's very poetic, or you know,
Well, the I suppose going back, one of the best books I've ever read was a book called Falling Upward he's a Catholic priest, I think in the US, called Richard Rohr, Rohr, and it's quite a religious book. Now you can take or leave that. I'm not religious myself, but you can take or leave that. But the message in it is essentially kind of, we spend the first half of life kind of doing the setup, where we kind of do the college, do the getting the job, getting married, having kids, paying the mortgage, and all that sort of thing. That's kind of the setup period. And it's really only in the later half, or the second half, the second act, really, that kind of we got the opportunity to get going on ourselves. And that's really, that whole idea of, midlife is really due a massive rebrand. Thankfully, it's happening a little bit, but it's midlife is I firmly believe, of course I would, because I'm kind of done it to some extent. It is a time of profound opportunity, a massive opportunity for us to kind of figure out, after all of these responsibilities, or after all these things we've done and we've had to do to kind of set ourselves up, and do the best we can at setting ourselves up. What do we want the rest of it to look like? Because you might as well design it, because it's going to happen. All going well, it's going to happen anyway.
yeah, it definitely is. Um, it's great. It's amazing that how many people don't stop and think about that stuff. They get caught up in the moment. I know I had a great fear of biting the bullet and going out on my own. And it was funny. I had a conversation with my daughter, maybe, I don't know, 2.5 years ago or whatever, when I was just really making the decision to, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go out on my own, leave the full time job. And we were walking up the road together, and she said, and you're going to look back in a year's time and you're going to say, why didn't I do this 5 years ago?
Hmm.
So, it's not often my daughter gives
Yeah.
me great life advice. And I'd say it was about a month later when I went, oh, I should have done this 5 years ago. So it kicked in an awful lot quicker for me than my daughter thought it would. But I definitely saw what she was saying, and it made me look at things, I suppose, a little bit differently. And it gave me that extra bit of push, another kind of nearly a rewind of,
Yeah.
yeah, you can go. It brings me back to my father years ago when I was a very young man, saying to me, son, go and find the job that you love and you'll never work another day in your life.
Yeah.
And my father was self-employed, and first of all, I remember him always telling me, I'll never go and work for another human being again. And he he'd be chatting about life and stuff, and he'd say, son, there's times when I have money, not loads and loads of money, but enough money, and I'm comfortable and things are going well, and there's times when I struggle, and there's times where things are just ticking along and everything is all right, and I'm okay with that.
Hmm.
And that's called life.
Yeah.
And I suppose I've taken something from that as well. And yeah, so the second act, I love the saying, and I think it's a fantastic way of looking at it. The difference between the logic brain and soul work. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I suppose if you talk about that whole idea that you just mentioned or the words you mentioned about being comfortable, and and me, when I was in my IT world, I was comfortable and getting paid at the end of every month, and mortgage was paid, and everything else was paid, and it was all ticking along, all very predictable, and brilliant, all really, and I wouldn't ever say anything bad about that if it's what you want to do. The thing that I found was this kind of, it was a niggle, kind of like, why am I, you mentioned the phrase, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And, that's where I'm very, very fortunate to find myself right now. And when I started coaching, I loved it. And then it kind of, and I did more of it and more of it and more of it. And that whole idea of it kind of a fulfilled life or of a fulfilled career kind of began to form in my head, and I actually began to realize, actually, what I have right now in the IT world is brilliant. It's really good. Lots of brilliant people, and I wouldn't, swap it. And I wouldn't not have done it, but it wasn't really filling my soul, I suppose, if you want to. It wasn't really firing me up. It was a job, and it felt like a job. But it was to leave it and, work in this other thing just wasn't logical. So there was no logic. The logic brain said, absolutely, what are you doing? That's nuts. But then then when the soul, my soul was kind of quietly, kind of the core of me was kind of saying, keep going, keep doing more coaching and see what happens. And eventually the opportunity did arise for me to kind of leave the IT world. And that's really a large part of what I do, is that I'm never really a big fan of this whole burn the boats idea of kind of throw everything, in the bin and start again. And, I can see a path for a lot of people, because I did it myself, where you can actually just build and build and build and build something, maybe a hobby into a career, or it doesn't even have to be that. Build up a fulfilled, more fulfillment and peace of mind and contentment into your life, so that, the job, becomes just that. It becomes it becomes just another thing that you do. But you've got this fulfilled piece, this kind of soul piece that is actually, that you're meeting that need. Now, whether it becomes a career or not, who knows? But that I was lucky enough that it did for me. So it's those voices that kind of that niggle in us that we kind of, and that it manifested for me in that question of, is this it? That's what I mean by soul work, is kind of like just actually, over time answering the question of, actually, what else could I do? What would a bit more fulfillment look like? What would a bit more contentment look like?
Yeah. And how do you think people recognize that?
By stopping, by slowing down. I was going to swear there because anyway,
You're
because
swear away.
there's a huge dose of, there's two things really that are fundamental. There's three things. One is the slowing down, the other is curiosity, and the other is compassion, self-compassion, and the third is self-compassion. So what I mean, so slowing down, kind of giving yourself the space, the time, the grace to kind of, ask yourself, well, what am I actually doing here? Am I living a life that I want to live, or am I just going with the flow? And what could change here slowly over time? And that's the kind of curiosity to go, what do I actually want? What do I actually want? And that's one of the hardest questions we can ask, because, you go, rabbit in headlights, I certainly I was. And then the compassion comes in really, really strongly, because being judgmental of ourselves for things just not going the way we want, and being, doing things that, that don't necessarily make logical sense, but we're still doing them, like drinking too much and smoking and all of, eat too much chocolate or cake or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
They don't make sense logically, but we have to have the compassion. If we want to change them, we have to have the compassion to actually go, okay, well, I'm just doing the best I can. So how can I actually change these things? And a little bit at a time. And giving yourself space and time to slow down and kind of answer the question over time of, okay, what do I want it to look like? Whether it is a year or whether it is the rest of your life.
I'm going to jump in there because you just touched on something which was kind of nearly my next question. Is around behavioral change, I suppose, really. And I know you've just touched on it there, but I read something that you wrote recently around behavioral change. And one of the things you said, if I'm wrong, was that it takes as long as it takes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they say, well, a habit takes 21 days to form, or 66 days, depending on the maths or who's teaching you. And the same, I suppose, with the brain and its plasticity to unlearn something. So to either learn a new habit or to unlearn an old habit, it takes as long as it takes. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. I really, really like that. And I'd be in agreement with that. But
Well, I suppose a lot of the work that I do, as I said, is supporting people to change their relationship with alcohol. And what I mean by that is that my relationship with alcohol happens to be one of abstinence. But you're not going to hear me say, that it is the absolute be all and end all. Abstinence is the absolute gold standard. It just happens to be, for me, there is a healthy relationship with alcohol there, where alcohol becomes part of an experience, but not the experience itself. And anyway, but most of the people that I would work with to change their relationship with alcohol will count the days since their last drink, for example, like say. And a few people that I've been working with, I've been in contact with recently, had, they've gone couple of 100 days, and then things have kind of gone sideways for them, and they've kind of gone, oh, will I ever get this? And the thing that happens inevitably is that you get down on yourself and you get judgmental of yourself. But if you don't give up and you kind of go, okay, well, what could this is the compassion piece coming in loud and clear here, is that, and really, really smacking us in the face of, what do I learn from this experience that will take me to the next level, whether it be kind of in another 100 days or whatever it might be. So, just keeping going and keeping that curiosity of, okay, what's working well and what could I do differently next time? That makes the number of days and the amount of time the change creates irrelevant. Absolutely. Now, obviously, the more time you spend doing something, the better you'll get at it. And that's just common sense. But I don't think it's just different for everybody. So it just takes as long as it takes, so long as you don't give up.
Yeah, I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you think willpower is enough? And if not, what else?
No, I don't, as you would expect me to say. It is enough to get you through January and through November. If you're sober October or dry January. Absolutely, it is enough. But the purpose of those is as at their core is to take a break, and it's not behavior change. So when we make any change, or when we start any change, particularly from a behavior that isn't serving us, like alcohol, for example, to a behavior that is, like, whatever it might be, or whatever we want it to be, we're doing it for one of two reasons, two sets of reasons. And the first set of reasons is what I call your reasons of desperation. And that's my word now, not on anyone else's, but it's what you don't want. I don't want the hangovers. I don't want that. I don't want. Really valuable and kind of almost essential at the beginning. And that will get you started, but it sure as hell won't keep you going without willpower. And willpower is a muscle, and it is energy, and you just run out of it. So what you've got to remember then is the second set of reasons, which is your reasons of inspiration. In other words, what do I want? And they don't come straight away necessarily, but they really don't come straight away. So if you are trying to answer the question, well, what do I want before I start making this change? You're probably looking at it the wrong way. It's just like, okay, just get started. And what you do want, if you go long enough and far enough and don't give up, what you do want, you'll get more of that, and you'll get less of what you don't want. But we have to get clear at some point in what we actually do want. And it just might be more of this energy and clarity that, I got about 100 days into being alcohol free. I thought, okay, I've never not had energy or clarity like this forever. I just want more of this. I'm not prepared to go back there.
Yeah.
And it just turns out it kind of snowballs from there.
It's a funny thing the way the mind works, isn't it? That we tend to gravitate towards the negatives rather than the positives.
Yeah. Yes.
I suppose that's our natural or innate
it's a bias, yeah.
Want for self-preservation, of the protection mode. So we go to the negative.
Absolutely, because
what if rather than yeah. Okay, I'm going to mix it up a little bit here. Talk to me a little bit about, so obviously I've been talking to you before this, and people that would know you from your website or social media and stuff like that. You're obviously a wheelchair user. So talk to me about disability, freedom, and the identity that can carry. And is there pros and cons to it if I'd use those words?
Well, first of all, before I say anything, I'm completely going to speak in a personal capacity. I won't, and I can't generalize about anything to do with disability. My take on on it was that I suppose I was walking with calipers and crutches until I was about 12 or 13. And then, as it turns out, I had a bunch of surgeries in my early teens on my legs, and that meant that the calipers would get much larger and more cumbersome, and my movement, if I was to walk, my movement would get just slower. And of course I could have persisted with that, but I didn't persist with that. I thought the wheelchair was an easier way of getting around. And so that is, and please redirect me if I'm not answering your question, but the assumption that being upright is the gold standard is something that I never really bought into, and I never will buy into. This is the way I navigate the world, and we all have the way we navigate the world. And I suppose we all have a disability in some form or other, whether it be glasses or whatever. But it's not something that is I focus on at all, actually, really, in terms of my day to day, obviously, because I don't see it, I'm just living it. But I do think challenge, if you want to call it that, challenge is a brilliant thing. Or growing up with challenges, I found out, as I didn't even know it was challenge at the time, but turns out maybe it probably was, informed, who I grew up to be, and informed why I'm talking to you right now and why I'm a coach, is that our challenges give us, a massive opportunity to have, different perspectives and different takes on the way that we navigate the world, So is disability relevant? Yes, it is in some ways, and then in other ways it's completely irrelevant to the way I navigate the world. So again, if I haven't answered your question, then that's my take
very
on.
Good. And there's a couple of different reasons even why I ask and say it to you, because I suppose for every family everywhere around the world, not just in
Hmm.
Ireland, we either know somebody or have a family member that might have a disability of some description or another. And I worked in social care settings for 20 years and for a couple of years in the disability sector. And the house that I worked in, or one of the houses that I worked in, with 7 adults with autism, and to look at them, you'd never know that they had autism. Okay, maybe if they were out in public and they were interacting and stuff like that, but visually it wasn't noticeable. And it was only until I really got in and worked in the sector that I realized all the different challenges and the different bits that come out of that. Um, and my perception of how I see people. So before that, I suppose if you were in a supermarket or you're out in a public place and you see somebody and you notice them, or they catch your eye, or they behave a certain way, or you might see the wheelchair or whatever
Hmm.
it is, you see them as in some way different. But they don't see it that way,
Yeah.
and even for some of the guys that I supported with autism, they didn't see it the way we see it.
Yeah.
And they were just getting on with life and doing
Yeah.
life, and I am the way I am. What do you mean there's something,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I really liked that. And it was, I suppose, a major eye opener to me. But I suppose when you're not the person yourself, I wonder then, does that have much of an impact on your identity and what that looks like and how you put that out there, or the impact that it has, on your personal life?
Do you mean other people's perceptions of me?
Well, yeah, or even that you might see yourself differently. Say to your two brothers.
Yeah. I think this goes back to the way my upbringing is, that I never really saw myself as different. But it also goes back, at one level, but it also goes back to my relationship with alcohol. And, because when I drank alcohol with all my friends who were pretty much exclusively able-bodied on Roscommon on a Saturday night, I was different. And alcohol kind of made the wheelchair kind of disappear. I was the same as everybody else. And which was using it as the tool that it was at the time in a way that didn't end up being absolutely catastrophic, but still wasn't great. So I don't see myself as different on one level, but I do in another level, the same as you see yourself as different from me. So,
Yes, yeah,
and,
yeah,
and there are things that I can't do physically, and that's absolutely fine. And, I've never been one to kind of go, well, okay, off you go and you play football. I'm not that bothered. I'll watch it. Fine, fair enough, but I'm not that bothered. My brothers have played GA, forever and ever. They don't anymore, but they used to. And it never really appeals to me as anything that I was missing out on. I can't really tell you what the reason was, but it's just not. And it's just, I am different, but, but only in the way you're different from me. And,
yes, of
my
course.
brothers are different. No, there's not just, I think the issue becomes when you feel less than, and thankfully and actually there is obviously another issue on the other side, but when you feel more than, but thankfully I don't think either of those are too much of a problem for me.
Good. One of the other things that I read, one of your blogs and some of the stuff that I was sifting through, the glorification of struggle.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
We have, Instagram and Facebook and the, people that are building business. You work on your own. You work for yourself. I work for myself. And as your father said, some months are great and some months are crap. And, there's a chance that me or you or anybody that works for themselves will fail at their business and have to start again, or fail at anything. And, what I really kick back at is that we should search out that failure and seek that failure and fail fast and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's fair enough. Failure will always be learning, but it will always suck, absolutely be completely shite. And we can't go away from, let's just be real and say failure will be hard. It will be painful. And so there's no point in saying that, oh yeah, we should all be failing and failing fast, because, well, yeah, maybe there is a point, but you've got to recognize that it's going to be completely shite when you do fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's not glorify it otherwise.
Yeah, there was another piece I came across recently about people coming out of addiction and putting themselves out there and oversharing their story, and the detrimental effect that that has, that when they step out of the limelight they then have to sit with themselves.
Mm,
And I suppose that they come out and put themselves out there, re-traumatize themselves
mm,
in public, and then have to go away and sit with themselves. And the constant need then to go back onto social media to
yeah,
share more and more and more, to get more likes, more shares,
yeah,
more comments, no more followers, and chasing that dopamine hit, I suppose, which is what they
yeah.
were coming away from. And then tell their story. Have you come across that, or do you see that, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, the I suppose me and you are we do we have very similar, we do very similar work. But you know, my work would be on, I suppose, the lower end of addiction, would be kind of in the middle ground or middle of the road. And so, just to make that distinction, you probably know a lot more about addiction, you know, at its, you know, in its most in its hardest form than I do. Um, but I do, and I do recognize that, very much recognize that. And the thing that I suppose that gives me, that worries me, is that when someone, you know, maybe changes their relationship with alcohol, or gives up, or comes out of some sort of addiction, maybe of some kind.
A life controlling issue.
Exactly. Something like that. What they, you know, if they're going to go and do an ultra marathon, or a kind of, you know, a million mile cycle, or whatever it might be, that worries me almost equally as much, because what you're doing really is going from one extreme to the other. And this is where, you know, I love the middle. I love boring. I love kind of like, when I say, you know, when I was talking about the reasons of inspiration before, what I'm actually talking about is what, as I said, was what you do want. And what I want is to be able to see the grass a bit greener, you know, in the springtime than it was in, you know, in the winter, or a bit, you know, the flowers, and, you know, it's the small things. And to be, you know, the stuff that kind of gives you the dopamine, and of course, and the kind of the serotonin and the oxytocin and all of these lovely chemicals. And one of the things I suppose I do talk about, with not from a scientific point of view, but, you know, not from a purely scientific point of view, but I do know that artificial, you know, stimulation, whether it be alcohol or drugs or anything, will spike your dopamine to a certain level depending on the substance. And, you know, when you actually uh, bring your dopamine back to something approaching normal, you know, and you look for, you know, stimulation, I suppose, you won't get that, you know, massive spike, but that's a good thing. And, you know, a lot of people call that boring, and, you know, if that's boring, bring it on.
That really is just learning how to sit with yourself, being able
Yeah.
to sit in the quiet, in the stillness, yeah, in that space, and to do nothing is okay. I suppose I would practice this in a lot of my work, but you know, you're talking to people about grounding, about
Hmm.
meditation, about nature, you know, a river
Yeah.
walk, paddling in the sea, all those kind of things. And like that, you know, you want me to what? Now I'm not asking people to go down and hug the nearest tree, although there might be some benefit to that. But yeah, when I suggest some of those things, or to sit there and do some breath work, and there's almost this, you know, perception that you want me to sit there and breathe. That's it. Surely there has to be more to this,
Yeah.
to the cure.
Yeah.
Not that it's the cure, you know, but you're doing a piece of work with somebody and you say, okay, this week I want you to go and do some grounding.
Hmm.
Of course, people try and overcomplicate everything. And then when you bring it back down to this, so could you stand in the back garden, and just consciously notice that your feet are on the ground, and you notice nature around you? Is there a tree where you can see the leaves blowing,
Yeah.
or can you feel the wind on your face, or you know, can you feel the fresh air going into your lungs, or can you listen to the sound of the birds in the background, or picking up the using your senses to
Yeah.
pick up, you know, nature, and is that not a bit airy fairy, you know? And then it can't be that simple. And sometimes it is. But it's that piece of being able to sit with yourself and give
Yeah.
yourself that space to be able to do that. And I remember when I got into studying trauma healing years ago, them telling me, that trauma will be released through the body, not necessarily through the chats. It's not always fixed with talk therapy. It took me a long, long time to get my head around how you release something from the body
Mm,
without talking about it,
mm,
as if it's as simple as going, right,
yeah.
off you go now, way with you. But being able to be comfortable enough with myself to bring myself into the place where I give myself the space to be able to let that process happen, I suppose. And that's that what might be perceived as the boring place, the non-exciting place. It's allowing yourself get in there and feel that. So, what do you think the difference between peace and settling for something is?
I suppose I don't get on very well with the phrase happiness. It kind of comes and goes, and it's fleeting, and by its nature it's transient. But I believe it has three components, and I believe now that I mentioned them earlier on is contentment, peace of mind, and fulfillment. And I think when you have those in whatever form it might be a job, it might be life, it might be relationship, it might be, I don't know, whatever it might be, and you feel this is whatever you're doing or or whoever you're with, it's easy. And that to me is a peace. That's the way I feel about the work that I do. As I say, I would never, regret anything I did in the IT industry, but it was always something I was settling for to kind of pay the bills. And it never gave me contentment. It never gave me peace of mind, but it did give me fulfillment. Absolutely. But when you have all three and you do the work, and it absolutely is work, you do the work to find, where that place is for you or places, then there is a peace that comes with that, that, is quite away from settling. I was going to say diametrically opposed, but that isn't necessarily the case, but it's a long way from settling for something. That isn't, you mentioned woo earlier on, that isn't suggesting that we should seek out a life that is all rainbows and fluffy bunnies and unicorns. We're not. Let's live in the real world. We all have to live, and we all have to do stuff that we don't want to do, and that's not changing anytime soon for any of us. And I'm not going to be the one that tells you it's going to. But there is a contentment, there is a peace of mind, and there is a fulfillment out there for everybody if you do the work.
Yeah. I think that's the saying that I didn't get for years and years and years was the yin and the yang, the good and the bad,
Yeah.
the light and the dark.
Yeah.
And to break that down for me in my mind is, I only experience joy because of the lack of joy. It's only because of bad that we know what good is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all the opposites. There has to be the opposite
Yeah.
to something for you to understand what the other thing is. The saying I love is every day is a school day. So
Yeah.
I suppose, is there anything that you're still learning about yourself or area that you're growing in? And what surprises you about yourself today?
To sound trite about it, everything. I'm still, it's a journey. I mean, it is a journey and not a destination. If I go back to kind of supporting people to make change, the kind of, it's almost like the kids in the back of the car. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? It is a journey, and I'm learning constantly every day about everything, about myself, about life, about the work that I do. You're right. It is one of my favorite phrases. Every day is a school day, and and when I do my values, as I do kind of check in on my values quite often, of learning will always be, 1, 2, or 3, depending on the time of day and the time of year that I check in on it. So I'm always learning about myself. It constantly surprises me how much I love the work that I do. And it constantly surprises me kind of the difference, no 2 days are the same. And it doesn't, in terms like, people I've worked with for years, but no two sessions with those people are the same. So every day is full of surprises to some degree, but in a kind of, maybe to use that word we used earlier on, kind of in a normal way, in a boring way. You don't get absolutely shocked every day, but like you learn something every day. And of course, as you know, reading's my thing. From a logical perspective, is just read every day and learn something every day. That's one of my core values, is to actually try and learn something new every day, whether it be about myself, or whether it be about my work, or whether it be whatever it might be.
Is there any part of your own second act that scares you?
I suppose, to be truthful, I say I'm into my just gone into my 4th year out of my own in business, and things look, different to what they looked like in early 2023 when I left. But, significantly differently. So kind of I suppose it scares me to think about what the next level of my career could look like. Because I have to be more specific about it, I want to write a book, but that scares the bejesus out of me, to write a book. But I do want to do that. I suppose I want to, somebody asked me, or my coach actually asked me a couple of years back, if you put a number on it, how many people would you want to, support? And I said, well, I'd like to improve 1,000,000 lives. Came out of my mouth before, and she, I wish she'd forget about it, but she constantly reminds me of it. And so that does scare me, I suppose, in one way, but excites me in another way, because I do believe that, ultimately, if I keep going, I'll get to a point where, things don't always, and this is what I said to my clients, is that if you set a goal, far out, and it looks a bit unbelievable and scary, you're very unlikely to actually hit it 100%. But 60% might be further than you've ever gone before, and might be further than you ever thought you'd be capable of going before. So, if I could get 60% of the way towards the big, hairy goals that I have, then, that'd be cool. I suppose that the other thing that has just come to mind is, probably need to, it scares me to believe in myself a little bit more. I think I probably could do some work there, and that's, that's ongoing. But I think it's ongoing for all of us. So
There's a piece there that comes to mind, there's nobody going to do it for you.
yeah,
And there's nobody going to knock on the door and remind you. And I bring this up in a lot of my work that I do myself, both in one-to-ones and in group work. And it was a huge lesson for me that I learned a few years ago. And I met a man, an American gentleman, and at the end of every time I'd meet him, he'd say, "Nobody told you today, Joe Davis loves you." And I've robbed his catchphrase, by the way, right? So if you ever watch any of my stuff on social media, you'll hear me saying, "Richard loves you." But and I questioned him on it one day, and I said, "Why do you say that every time, Joe?" Because I'd heard him say it 50 times, and then I was like, "Why did he say that? That's a bit weird." And he said, "Because I don't want it to be the last time that I see you." And we went on then another day, it was a group of men, and Valentine's a couple of years ago, and he spoke about 20 odd grown men talking about love. It was the most mushy men's group I'd ever been in my life. Fascinating conversation. And I learned so much from that experience. He spoke about self love that day. And he said, "When I wake up," what's the first thing he said you do in the morning? I said, "I get up and I go to the loo." And he said, "Exactly. So you go into the bathroom first thing in the morning," he said, "and you go to the toilet or whatever." He said, "But," he said, "this is what I do every morning. Before I leave the bathroom," he said, "I stand and I eyeball myself in the mirror and I say, 'Joe Davis, I love you.'" And he said, "When was the last time you looked yourself in the mirror straight in the eye with a straight face and told yourself that you loved yourself? Not in an egotistical way, but that you loved yourself. How's your self love today?" And that challenged the life out of me. Do you love yourself? "Ah, yeah, of course I do. Yeah, yeah,
mm.
yeah." "No, do you really love yourself?" "Yeah, well," and the cringe starts to happen, and right,
yeah,
and the head drops, and you're like, "Oh,
yeah.
fuck's sake, you're not going to go there, are you?" But that's really true self-love piece. And the conversation that day, and I've took huge pieces from it myself in what I give to others now, and it's, how do I truly give love to somebody else if I don't first love myself? If I don't love myself 100%, how do I give 100% love to others? And the impact that self love piece has on me my walk, the way I carry myself, my self-belief, my confidence. The piece where you challenge yourself not to be
Yeah.
egotistical, and it's not the big I am, but the real, authentic, true version of yourself, I think is really, really important. That piece of wanting to push or wanting to grow or wanting to get to the next level,
Yeah.
how do you do that? So I have all the theory in my brain that says, okay, you need to contact 20 people this week and put yourself out there to them, because
Yeah.
if people don't know you, how do they buy in your services?
Yeah.
And you go, that's a great idea. And then it comes to the crunch of, oh, fuck that. Yeah, okay, I'll do that next week. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've printed 20 posters to hang up around the place. Now I need to go and hang them in shop windows. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Where's
I
the
get that
kids?
totally.
Kids, will you go down and hang them up on the windows for me? But where does that come from? What is that? And yeah, for me, that's the challenging piece for me. That's the little fear piece for me. I love hearing you say that, Gary, because that instills hope in me. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Because I think I'm not the only one. It's not just me. I'm
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I do think we do struggle with it in this country as well. It's a particularly Irish thing.
Great point, and very, very, very true. I done a little bit of a piece on that in the book that I wrote in about Shadows of the Past, our intergenerational traumas and
Mm.
how it shapes us as a people or a nation. Very, very good. Let me see if I any more questions before we wrap this up. I don't have any real curveballs or anything like that. There's two things I like to wrap up with, before I kind of hand over fully to yourself before the end, is if there was something you could say to yourself, the younger self, the 20-year-old Gary, what would it be?
It would be two things. One, slow down, and two, you'll be okay. Because I do believe if we just keep going and slow down, we will be okay.
Yeah, very good. And if you had a message to leave to anybody that would listen to this, what would it be?
I suppose it to when we're thinking about goals, I suppose it would be to kind of and who you want to be. I suppose it would be to ponder that question of who you want to be and to believe in as much as you can that it is not too late, no matter what has gone in the past. That the thing about the past is that it's gone, it's done. That there isn't a single thing we can do to fix it or to change it. So change can happen at any point in life, at any point in life, and got to do the work, but it absolutely can happen. So that's what I would say to people. Change can happen at any point if you put the work in.
My last question, what does it mean to you to be really healed?
I think to know myself, to be honest with myself, and they say that hope is not a strategy. I disagree. I think it is a great strategy to have, is that, to just be hopeful that if you put in the work, that life will turn out the way you would like it to turn out. Now, it probably won't turn out exactly like you would want it to turn out, but because there's struggle and there's responsibility, but it will if you're honest and you put in the work.
Very good. Very good. Gary, tell us what you have going on for the world. Tell us where we can find you. Yeah, give
Well,
us all the details.
well, if we go back into the first of all, go back into the second act, I have a course that I run periodically called the Second Act Blueprint, which is for people kind of in the kind of 40 plus that are at that stage where kind of they know they want something else, or they know there's something out there, but they're not really sure what it is. It's a 7-week course in a very small group. I only take about 6 people at a time, and where we work together over the course of 7 weeks to create, it's called the Second Act Blueprint, to create a blueprint of what you would like your second act to look like. And second act can be defined in any damn way you want it to do. So we look at a whole different series of things in that course. And so I'm taking applications for that right now.
How would you apply for that? Is it online or face to face or?
Well, if you said I can be, GaryAllen.ie is my email. Sorry, is my website. www.garyallen.ie is my email. So you could send me a message to that, or get me on hello@garyallen.ie, and I will send you the details. I'm running a webinar on the the 12th of May, which is kind of going to be around that whole idea of a second act. But the course is starting on the 26th of May. So drop me a note on the at hello@garyallen.ie, and I'll send all the details. But I suppose the other thing too is my one-to-one work. As I say, I've coached hundreds of people at this point over the last 8-9 years to change their relationship with alcohol. So I'm always, and that's a work I absolutely love doing. I'll do it until the day I die. And so, if anyone wanted support around that or wanted to chat around, their relationship with alcohol, then just drop me a note. I'm on Facebook, and hello, I'm on the web, garyallen.ie, or which you can send me a note through the website, or an email at garyallen.ie, at hello@garyallen.ie. And I suppose the last thing is Substack. I write on Substack every week, and I write a blog that comes out every Sunday morning, and that you can find on thelifedesigner.substack.com. It's all one word, thelifedesigner.substack.com.
Good. Gary, thank you so much for today. It was
Thank
great
you,
having
Richard. It
a
was
chat
fabulous.
with you. You never know, we might catch up again in the future
Absolutely.
sometime.
No doubt.
I had somebody pitch an idea to me last week, actually, recording a podcast. It's not out yet. Lovely gentleman. I don't know whether you've ever come across him or not. Brian Foley. He's MI Ireland, motivational interviewing.
No.
So he teaches motivational interviewing all over the country with lots of different organizations. Fantastic guy. And he said to me at the end of it, he said, would you do a sit round the table, just have a few different topics thrown on the table, and just have it as a kind of a very informal chat kind of thing, rather than his thing is MI, obviously. And I thought that's a great idea, actually. I think I'd like that.
Absolutely.
So you never know. But Gary, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Once
Richard.
again, and thank you everybody for tuning in and listening to this week's episode of the Really Heal podcast. We'll be back with you soon. Thank you.